The blizzard had come without warning, and when Wade Oakes pushed open the barn door that February morning in 1884, he expected to find nothing more than his horses restless from the cold wind that howled through the valley outside Abiquiu, New Mexico. What he found instead was a woman collapsed in the hay, her lips blue, her dark hair matted with ice crystals that caught the pale dawn light filtering through the wooden slats. Wade dropped to his knees beside her, his calloused hands already reaching to check for a pulse. For a terrible moment he thought she was dead, but then her chest rose with a shallow breath that rattled in her lungs. He stripped off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her trembling form, calling out even though he knew no one would hear him. His ranch sat 3 miles from the nearest neighbor, and the storm had left snowdrifts as high as a man's chest across the New Mexico landscape. "Can you hear me?" Wade asked, his voice urgent as he brushed the ice from her face. Her skin felt like marble beneath his fingers. "Miss, can you open your eyes?" Her eyelids fluttered, revealing irises the color of storm clouds. Her lips moved, forming words that came out as barely a whisper. Wade leaned closer, his ear nearly touching her mouth. "Zachary," she breathed, the single word carrying the weight of desperation. "Find Zachary." Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp in his arms. Wade did not hesitate. He lifted her from the hay, surprised by how light she felt, how fragile. She could not have weighed more than 100 pounds, and most of that seemed to be the layers of torn, frozen clothing that clung to her frame. He carried her across the snow-covered yard to his small ranch house, kicking the door open with his boot and bringing her directly to the hearth where the fire from last night still glowed with embers. He laid her on the braided rug in front of the fireplace and set to work building up the flames. The wood crackled and popped as he added log after log, forcing heat into the cold room. Then he turned his attention back to the woman who had somehow ended up in his barn in the middle of a snowstorm. Her coat was soaked through, as were her dress and the layers beneath. Wade knew enough about frontier medicine to understand that leaving her in wet clothes would kill her as surely as the cold had almost done. His hands shook slightly, not from cold but from the impropriety of what he had to do, but he forced himself to work quickly, removing her sodden garments and replacing them with his own long underwear and a flannel shirt that hung on her like a tent. He wrapped her in every blanket he owned and positioned her as close to the fire as he dared. Only then did he allow himself to truly look at her face. She was young, perhaps 23 or 24, with delicate features that spoke of a life that should have been sheltered from hardship. A thin scar ran along her jawline, barely visible but suggesting a past that held violence. Her hands, when he examined them, were soft but bore fresh cuts and scratches, as if she had been running through brambles or fighting her way through rough terrain. Wade fetched water from the kitchen pump and set a kettle to boil on the cook stove. While he waited, he tried to make sense of what had happened. The nearest town was Abiquiu, a small settlement nestled in the Rio Arriba Valley, where Spanish and Anglo settlers uneasily shared space with the Pueblo peoples who had lived there for generations. The railroad had not yet reached this far into northern New Mexico territory, which meant anyone traveling through this country did so on horseback or by wagon. But there had been no horse in his barn, no wagon tracks in the snow, just a woman who appeared as if she had fallen from the sky itself. The kettle whistled and Wade prepared a weak tea, adding honey from the jar he kept in his sparse pantry. He returned to the woman and carefully lifted her head, trying to get her to drink. Most of the liquid dribbled down her chin, but some made it past her lips. Her eyelids fluttered again. "That's it," Wade murmured, his voice gentling in a way it rarely did. He had lived alone for 3 years now, ever since he had bought this land with money saved from a decade of cattle drives and ranch work. At 32, he had grown accustomed to silence, to the company of horses and the occasional coyote song in the night. "Come on back. You are safe now." Her eyes opened fully this time, focusing on his face with an intensity that startled him. They were gray, he confirmed, the color of thunderheads before a summer storm. Fear flickered in those depths, and she tried to pull away from him. "Easy," Wade said, setting the cup aside and raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You were near frozen in my barn. I brought you inside. You are safe." "Where?" Her voice was hoarse, barely audible. "My ranch, about 3 miles northeast of Abiquiu, New Mexico territory. I am Wade Oakes. What is your name?" She stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether she could trust him. Finally, she whispered, "Zara." "Zara what?" "Zara Bennett." She tried to sit up and immediately swayed, her face going pale. Wade caught her shoulders, easing her back down to the blankets. "You need to stay still. You have been through hell by the looks of it. How did you end up in my barn?" Her eyes filled with tears that spilled down her temples. "I was running. They were chasing me. I saw the barn and I could not go any further. I thought I would rest for just a moment, but then everything went dark." "Who was chasing you?" The fear in her eyes intensified. "Did you see anyone? Did anyone follow me here?" "No one could have followed you through that storm last night. The snow drifted higher than my windows. Even if someone tried, they would have frozen before making it half a mile." Some of the tension left her body. "How long have I been here?" "I found you perhaps an hour ago. The sun is barely up." Wade studied her carefully. "Who is Zachary?" The name hit her like a physical blow. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength, her fingers digging into his sleeve. "You know where he is. You know Zachary. You spoke his name when I found you. That is all I know." "Who is he?" The hope that had flared in her face died. "My brother. He is my brother. I have been looking for him for 3 months, I thought. When I woke up here, I thought maybe you had found him too." Wade felt something twist in his chest at the grief in her voice. "Tell me what happened. Start from the beginning." Zara closed her eyes, and for a moment Wade thought she might refuse. But then she began to speak, her words tumbling out in a rush as if she had been holding them back for too long. "We came from Pennsylvania," she said. "My brother and I. Our parents died 2 years ago, left us with nothing but debts. Zachary heard about silver strikes in Colorado and convinced me we should head west, try to make a new start. We made it as far as Denver when he met a man named Victor Crane." The name meant nothing to Wade, but he stayed silent, letting her continue. "Crane was a gambler, a smooth talker. He convinced Zachary to invest what little money we had left in a mining claim down in New Mexico territory. Said it was a sure thing, that we would be rich within a year. So we came south, all the way to a camp called Silver Springs, up in the mountains east of here." Wade knew the place. It was one of dozens of small mining operations that had sprung up in the Sangre de Cristo range, most of them destined to fail within a season or two. "The claim was worthless," Zara continued, her voice bitter. "There was no silver. Crane had swindled us. Zachary confronted him, demanded our money back, and Crane laughed in his face. That night there was a fight. Crane pulled a gun. Zachary, my brother, shot him, killed him." "Self-defense," Wade said. "That is what it was, but Crane's men did not see it that way. They ran Zachary out of camp, told him if they ever saw him again they would hang him. I tried to go with him, but he made me stay. Said it was too dangerous, that he would send for me once he found somewhere safe." "When was this?" 3 months ago. November. He was supposed to write to me care of the general store in Silver Springs, but I never received a single letter. I waited as long as I could, working as a laundress to pay for room and board, but last week Crane's men came to me. Said they knew where Zachary was hiding. Said they would tell me if I. She trailed off, her face flushing with shame. Wade's jaw tightened. They wanted payment. I ran instead. Took a horse and rode south, thinking maybe I could find someone in Santa Fe or Taos who might help me. But the horse threw me 2 days ago. I walked after that, tried to follow the Rio Chama Valley toward Abiquiu. Then the storm hit, and I could not see anything. I just kept walking until I saw your barn. She looked up at him with those gray eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. I have to find my brother, Mr. Oakes. He is all the family I have left in this world. Will you help me? Wade should have said no. He should have told her that as soon as the snow cleared enough, he would take her to Abiquiu where she could wire the territorial marshal in Santa Fe about Crane's men. He should have kept his distance from this woman with her desperate quest and her dangerous pursuers. Instead, he found himself nodding. I will help you find him. The relief that washed over Zara's face was so profound it almost broke his heart. She slept then, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. Wade covered her with another blanket and stood, his knees protesting after kneeling on the hard floor for so long. He moved to the window and looked out at the white landscape. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed. Snow clung to every surface, turning his modest ranch into something that looked almost beautiful in the morning light. But beauty in this country was often deceptive. The same snow that made the valley sparkle like diamonds would make travel impossible for days. And somewhere out there, if Zara's story was true, men were looking for her. Men who would not hesitate to hurt a woman who had defied them. Wade went to the heavy trunk in the corner of his bedroom and opened it, pulling out the gun belt he had not worn in 3 years. The Colt Peacemaker sat in its holster, cleaned and oiled despite his retirement from the rougher aspects of frontier life. He had worked as a deputy marshal for 2 years in his 20s, tracking outlaws through the Arizona Territory until a bullet in the shoulder convinced him to seek a quieter occupation. The scar still ached when the weather turned cold. He strapped on the gun belt, feeling its familiar weight settle on his hips. Then he pulled on his coat and boots and headed back out to the barn to tend to his horses. The 3 animals whickered at his approach, stamping their feet in the cold. As he forked hay into their stalls, Wade's mind worked through the problem Zara had laid before him. Zachary Bennett could be anywhere in New Mexico territory by now, assuming he was even still alive. The territory was vast and unforgiving, full of places where a man could disappear forever. Finding one person would be like trying to catch smoke with his bare hands, but Wade had resources most people lacked. He knew this country, knew the people who lived in the scattered settlements and ranches. He had connections from his time as a lawman, favors he could call in. If Zachary Bennett was out there, Wade would find him. The question was why he cared so much. He had met Zara barely 2 hours ago. She was nothing to him, just another soul in trouble in a land full of desperate people. The smart thing would be to help her get to Abiquiu, wash his hands of the whole affair, and return to his quiet life. But when he returned to the house and found her still sleeping by the fire, her face peaceful for the first time since he had found her, Wade knew he could not walk away. There was something about her that called to him, some quality he could not name. Maybe it was the courage it must have taken to run from Crane's men. Maybe it was the fierce love she showed for her brother. Or maybe it was simply that for the first time in 3 years, Wade felt like he had a purpose beyond maintaining fences and breaking horses. Whatever the reason, he was committed now. Zara woke that afternoon to find Wade sitting at his small kitchen table, writing on a piece of paper. Sunlight streamed through the window, making her squint. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice still rough. Wade looked up. "Making a list of people who might have information about your brother. There is a man in Taos who runs a boarding house, tends to remember faces. Another fellow in Espanola who buys and sells horses, hears all the gossip. And the sheriff in Abiquiu owes me a favor from a few years back. Zara pushed herself up on her elbows, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. You really mean to help me? I gave you my word. You do not even know me. Wade set down his pencil and met her eyes. I know enough. You are scared and alone and searching for family. That is all I need to know. Something shifted in Zara's expression, a wall coming down. Why? It was a fair question. Wade considered lying, offering some noble explanation about duty or honor. But there was something about this woman that demanded honesty. I have been alone a long time, he said quietly. Maybe too long. You showing up in my barn, half frozen, asking for help. Maybe it reminded me that there is more to life than keeping my head down and avoiding trouble. I am sorry I brought trouble to your door. I did not say I minded. Wade smiled slightly and was rewarded with an answering smile from Zara that transformed her whole face. For a moment he caught a glimpse of what she must have been like before grief and hardship had marked her, and the sight made his breath catch. Zara's smile faded as reality reasserted itself. When can we leave? Wade glanced toward the window. The snow is still too deep for the horses. Another day, maybe two, and it will melt enough to make travel possible. In the meantime, you need to rest and build your strength back up. You are in no condition for a hard ride. I feel fine. You look like a strong wind would knock you over. When is the last time you ate a proper meal? Zara's silence was answer enough. That is what I thought. Wade stood and moved to the kitchen area. I am not much of a cook, but I can manage beans and cornbread. You will eat and you will rest, and when you are strong enough, we will find your brother. Over the next 2 days, Wade learned more about Zara Bennett. She was 24, born in Philadelphia to parents who had run a small dry goods store. Her father had been a quiet man who loved books, her mother a spirited woman who sang while she worked. Zachary was 2 years older than Zara, protective and ambitious, always dreaming of something bigger than the life they had, when their parents had died within months of each other. Victims of the influenza that swept through Philadelphia in 1882, Zachary had taken it hard. He had promised their father on his deathbed that he would take care of Zara, give her a good life. The debts had been a shock. Their father, it turned out, had been borrowing money to keep the store afloat for years. Everything had to be sold to pay the creditors, leaving the siblings with barely enough money for train tickets west. Zachary blamed himself, Zara said. They were sitting at Wade's kitchen table, finishing the evening meal. Outside, the sun was setting over the snow-covered valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He thought if he had been paying more attention to the business instead of working at the docks, he would have known about the debts, could have done something. Your father was a grown man, Wade said. He made his own choices. I told Zachary that. He would not listen. He needed to prove himself, needed to show he could take care of me the way he promised. That is why he was so desperate to believe Victor Crane when he talked about the silver claim. It seemed like the answer to everything. Wade could hear the affection and frustration in her voice when she spoke of her brother, the complicated tangle of love and exasperation that came from truly knowing someone. Tell me about you, Zara said suddenly. You know my whole sad story. I do not even know where you came from. Wade shifted in his chair, uncomfortable with the attention. Not much to tell. I grew up in Texas, worked cattle drives from the time I was 16. Got tired of eating dust and decided to try my hand at law work. Did that for a while, saved my money, bought this place. Why here? Why New Mexico? I passed through Abiquiu on my way to track a horse thief once. There is something about this valley, the way the light hits the red rocks in the evening, the sound of the river. It felt like peace. When I decided to quit the law business, I remembered this place and came back. Do you miss it? The excitement of chasing outlaws. Wade considered the question seriously. Sometimes, but mostly I do not. I saw too many men die over stupid things. Money, pride, a woman they barely knew. Started to feel like all I was doing was cleaning up messes that did not need to happen in the first place. Is that how you see me? As a mess? No. Wade met her eyes across the table. I see you as someone worth helping. The air between them seemed to thicken with something unspoken. Zara looked away first, color rising in her cheeks. I should help you clean up, she said, standing quickly and gathering the plates. They worked side by side in a silence that was not uncomfortable, washing dishes and putting away food. Wade found himself acutely aware of Zara's presence, the way she moved through his small kitchen, the sound of her breathing. It had been a long time since he had shared his space with anyone, and having her here felt both strange and oddly right. That night, Wade gave Zara his bed and took the floor by the fire himself, despite her protests. He lay awake long after her breathing had evened out into sleep, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of the feelings churning in his chest. He barely knew this woman. She would be gone as soon as they found her brother, back to whatever life awaited her. Getting attached would be foolish, but as he finally drifted off to sleep, Wade could not shake the memory of her smile or the way his quiet house felt less empty with her in it. The weather broke on the third day. The temperature climbed above freezing, and the snow began to melt, creating streams of water that ran down from the mountains and turned the roads to mud. Wade saddled 2 horses while Zara dressed in spare clothes he had scrounged together, men's trousers and a shirt that he belted tight at her waist, plus his extra coat and a hat to keep the sun off her face. "You look like a cowhand," Wade said when she emerged from the house. "Is that a compliment? In this country, yes." They rode toward Abiquiu, taking it slow through the muddy terrain. The valley spread out around them, a landscape of red earth and sage, pinon pines and juniper. To the east, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains rose against the bright blue sky, their peaks still white with snow. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. "It is beautiful," Zara said softly. "It grows on you," Wade agreed. "Not as green as Pennsylvania, I imagine." "No, but there is something about all this space. Like you can breathe properly for the first time." Wade understood exactly what she meant. They reached Abiquiu by mid-morning. The town was small, just a collection of adobe buildings clustered around a central plaza where Spanish and Pueblo architecture mixed. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the smell of baking bread drifted from one of the houses. A few people moved about their business, wrapped in thick coats and shawls against the lingering cold. Wade led them to the sheriff's office, a low building at the edge of the plaza. Sheriff Martinez was a compact man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked up from his desk when Wade and Zara entered, and a smile creased his weathered face. "Wade Oaks, I heard you were still hiding out on that ranch of yours. Thought maybe you had frozen to death last winter. Good to see you too, Carlos." Wade shook the sheriff's hand, then gestured to Zara. "This is Miss Zara Bennett. She needs our help finding her brother." Carlos's expression turned serious as he listened to Zara's story. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "I know of Victor Crane," he said. "Or knew, I should say, if he is dead. He ran a crooked operation up at Silver Springs. Sold worthless claims to desperate people, took their money and left them with nothing. No one liked him much, but he had enough men working for him that most folks kept quiet." "What about Zachary Bennett?" Wade asked. Any chance he passed through here 3 months ago, Carlos shook his head. I would remember. We do not get many strangers this time of year, but I can ask around, see if anyone saw him. He looked at Zara with sympathy. Where did your brother say he was headed when he left Silver Springs? He did not say. He just told me to wait for his letter. That makes it harder. New Mexico territory is a big place. Carlos stood and walked to a map pinned to the wall, studying it. If he was running from Crane's men, he would want to put distance between himself and Silver Springs. He could have gone south to Santa Fe or Albuquerque, or maybe west to Arizona territory. Hard to say. What about the man in Taos you mentioned? Zara asked Wade. The one with the boarding house. Thomas Reed. Good memory for faces, and he keeps a guest book. If Zachary stayed there, Thomas would know. Wade turned to Carlos. We are headed up that way. If you hear anything, will you send word? Of course. Be careful, though. If Crane's men are looking for Miss Bennett, they might come this way too. I will keep an eye out, send them on a false trail if I can. They left Abiquiu an hour later with fresh supplies and directions to the boarding house in Taos. The ride north would take most of the day, following the road that wound along the Rio Grande Gorge. Wade kept a sharp eye on their surroundings, looking for any sign of pursuit, but the road remained empty save for the occasional wagon or rider heading the opposite direction. Zara rode well, he noticed. She sat her horse with confidence, adapting easily to the rough terrain. When he complimented her, she smiled. Zachary taught me. He said every woman should know how to ride, how to shoot, how to take care of herself. Our mother thought he was being ridiculous, but I am glad now that I listened to him. Smart man, your brother, he is. He makes bad decisions sometimes when he is under pressure, like trusting Victor Crane. She was quiet for a moment. Do you think he is alive, Mr. Oakes, truly? Wade considered lying, offering easy reassurance, but he respected Zara too much for that. I think if he is half as stubborn as his sister, then yes, he is alive. And stop calling me Mr. Oakes. It is Wade. Wade, she repeated, and he liked the way his name sounded in her voice. They stopped for a quick meal at midday, resting the horses and eating the bread and cheese they had bought in Abiquiu. The day had warmed considerably, and patches of grass were starting to show through the melting snow. Spring was still a ways off, but winter's grip was beginning to loosen. Can I ask you something? Zara said as they sat on a fallen log overlooking the river far below. Sure. You said you got shot when you were a deputy marshal. What happened? Wade touched his shoulder reflexively. Routine arrest turned into a shooting. Fellow had robbed a stagecoach outside Tucson, killed the driver. We tracked him to a farmhouse where his sister lived. He came out shooting. My partner got him, but not before the robber put a bullet through my shoulder. Spent 6 weeks recovering, and by the time I could use the arm again, I had decided I was done with that life. Do you regret it? Quitting? No. I regret that the driver died and that the robber's sister had to watch her brother get killed, but I do not regret walking away. He looked at her. Some people are built for that kind of life. The violence, the constant risk. I thought I was, but I was wrong. Turned out what I really wanted was a quiet place where I could watch the sun set and know I would probably wake up in the morning. That does not sound so bad. It is not. Or it was not anyway. Wade smiled wryly. Then you showed up half frozen in my barn and quiet went right out the window. Zara laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Sorry about that. I am not, Wade said, and meant it. They reached Taos as the sun was setting, painting the adobe buildings gold and amber. The town was larger than Abiquiu, more established, with a real main street and multiple businesses. Wade led them to a 2-story building with a sign that read Reed's boarding house. Thomas Reed was a tall, thin man with a professorial air about him, wearing spectacles and a vest despite the casual nature of his establishment. His face lit up when he saw Wade. "Good Lord, Wade Oakes. I thought you had turned into a hermit." Thomas pumped Wade's hand enthusiastically. "What brings you to town? We are looking for someone." Wade introduced Zara and explained about Zachary. "Would have been 3 months ago, maybe a bit less. Young fellow, traveling alone probably, might have seemed worried or scared." Thomas's expression grew thoughtful. 3 months ago. "November, you said." He went to the desk and pulled out a leather-bound book, flipping through pages covered in neat handwriting. "I keep records of everyone who stays here. Name, date, where they are from if they tell me. Let me see." He ran his finger down the entries, muttering to himself. Then he stopped. "Here, November 20th. Zachary Bennett from Pennsylvania, stayed 3 nights, paid in advance." He looked up at Zara. "Is that your brother?" Zara rushed to the desk, her hands shaking as she looked at the entry. "That is his name. That is him. Did he say where he was going?" "We talked a bit," Thomas said. "He seemed like a nice young man, but troubled. Said he was trying to decide between heading to California or maybe trying his luck in Colorado. Asked me which I thought had better opportunities." "What did you tell him?" "I said Colorado was closer and the mining towns up there were still booming. California was more of a gamble, longer trip, but might have more variety of work." Thomas closed the book. "He thanked me and left the next morning. I have not seen him since." "Colorado," Zara breathed. "He went to Colorado." Wade put a hand on her shoulder, feeling her trembling beneath his touch. "We do not know that for certain. He might have changed his mind. But it is a lead. It is more than we had this morning." She looked up at Thomas. Thank you so much." "I hope you find him, miss. He seemed like he could use a friendly face." Thomas offered them rooms for the night, but Wade caught the exhaustion in Zara's eyes and suggested they stay. They took separate rooms, though Wade lay awake for a long time listening to the sounds of the boarding house settling around him and wondering if Zara was sleeping any better. In the morning, over breakfast in Thomas's dining room, they discussed their options. "Colorado is a big territory," Wade said, keeping his voice low even though they were the only guests. "Mining towns scattered all through the mountains. If Zachary went there, he could be in any of them." "He would go somewhere busy," Zara said. "Somewhere he could disappear, find work without anyone asking too many questions." "Where would that be?" Wade thought about it. "Leadville, maybe, or Silverton. Both have big mining operations, lots of people coming and going. But getting to either one from here, especially in winter, would not be easy. He is resourceful. If anyone could do it, Zachary could." Her faith in her brother was absolute, unshakable. Wade found himself hoping desperately that it was not misplaced, that Zachary Bennett was worthy of such loyalty. They left Taos after breakfast, heading northeast toward the Colorado border. The terrain grew rougher, climbing into the foothills of the Sangre de Cristo Range. Snow still covered the ground here, deeper than it had been in the valley, and the horses struggled in places. Late in the afternoon, as they crested a ridge, Wade saw smoke rising from a canyon below. Too much smoke for a campfire. Something was burning. "Stay here," he told Zara, but she ignored him, following as he urged his horse down the slope toward the source of the smoke. They found a small homestead, or what was left of one. The cabin was fully engulfed, flames licking at the roof and pouring black smoke into the sky. A wagon sat nearby, its contents scattered across the snow. And lying in the doorway of the cabin was a man, his clothes smoking. Wade was off his horse in an instant, running to the man and dragging him away from the fire. The man was unconscious but alive, his pulse thready beneath Wade's fingers. Burns covered his hands and part of his face, and he reeked of kerosene. Zara appeared at Wade's side with a canteen. Together they poured water over the man's burns and tried to rouse him. His eyes flickered open, unfocused with pain. "What happened?" Wade asked. "Who did this?" "Men," the homesteader gasped. "4 of them, looking for someone, girl, dark hair, said she stole from them." His eyes found Zara and widened. "You?" Zara went pale. "Crane's men, they are looking for me." "I told them I did not know anything," the man continued, his voice weakening. "They did not believe me, set the fire, said it was a lesson." Rage flooded through Wade, hot and fierce. "Where did they go?" "North, following the road to Colorado." The man's eyes closed. "Sorry." "Sorry I could not." "You did nothing wrong," Wade said firmly. "You need a doctor. The nearest town is 2 hours south. Can you ride?" "I think so." They got the homesteader onto Zara's horse, Wade supporting him while Zara walked alongside. It took 3 agonizing hours to reach the small settlement of Cuesta, where a doctor agreed to treat the man's burns. By the time they left him in the doctor's care, night had fallen and they were both exhausted. "This is my fault," Zara said as they found rooms at a small inn. "That man was hurt because of me." "That man was hurt because Crane's men are animals," Wade corrected. "This is not on you, Zara. None of this is." But he could see the guilt eating at her, the way it settled into her shoulders and dimmed her eyes. That night, Wade made a decision. Finding Zachary was still important, but first they needed to deal with Crane's men. As long as those 4 were hunting Zara, no one in their path was safe. In the morning, Wade outlined his plan. Instead of running north to Colorado, they would double back south, lay a false trail that Crane's men would follow. Then they would circle around and continue the search for Zachary. "You want to use me as bait," Zara said. "I want to lead them away from innocent people. There is a difference." "What happens when they catch up to us?" Wade met her eyes steadily. "They will not catch us. I promise you that." They spent the day laying their trail, making sure to be seen in Cuesta, asking loud questions about the road to Santa Fe. Wade paid a stable boy to tell anyone who asked that they were heading south. Then, after dark, they slipped out of town heading east, into the mountains. The riding was brutal. They navigated by moonlight, following trails that were little more than game paths. The temperature dropped below freezing, and their breath made clouds in the frigid air. But Wade pushed on, wanting to put as much distance as possible between them and Cuesta before morning. They stopped just before dawn in a sheltered canyon where a small stream ran unfrozen. Wade built a tiny fire, just enough to boil water for coffee while Zara tended the horses. "You should sleep," Wade said when she returned to the fire. "I will keep watch. I am not tired. You are dead on your feet, I can see it." Zara sank down beside him with a sigh. "Maybe a little tired." They sat in silence for a while, sipping the bitter coffee and listening to the sounds of the waking forest. A jay called from somewhere above them, and the horses shifted quietly in their makeshift picket. "Wade." Zara's voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Yeah. Why are you really doing this? And do not say because I asked for help or because it is the right thing. There is more to it than that." Wade stared into the fire, watching the flames dance. "When I quit being a deputy marshal, I told myself I was done getting involved in other people's problems. I would keep to myself, live a quiet life, not let anyone get close enough to matter. And for 3 years that worked. I was not happy exactly, but I was not unhappy either. I just was." He paused, searching for the right words. "Then you showed up in my barn and everything changed. Suddenly I cared again. About finding your brother, about keeping you safe, about whether that homesteader survived his burns. You woke something up in me that I thought was dead, and I am grateful for that, even if it is complicated and scary and probably foolish." Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "It is not foolish." Wade looked at her and found her watching him with an expression that made his heart stutter in his chest. "I feel it too," she whispered. "This thing between us. I have felt it since I woke up in your house and saw you trying so hard to help a stranger. You are a good man, Wade Oakes, the kind of man I did not think existed anymore." Wade reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he cupped her cheek in his palm, feeling the softness of her skin against his calloused hand. "I am falling for you," he said, the words raw and honest. "I know it is too fast. I know we have barely met, but I cannot help it. You are." "I know," Zara said, and then she leaned in and kissed him. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two people discovering each other. Then it deepened, and Wade felt something inside him click into place, like a key turning in a lock. This was what had been missing from his quiet life. Not peace, but connection. Not solitude, but intimacy. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Zara rested her forehead against his. "We should not," she murmured. "Not until we find Zachary, not until this is over. I know, but I do not want to stop." "I do not either." They sat there, wrapped in each other's arms as the sun rose over the mountains and painted the snow pink and gold. Wade had never felt more alive, more certain that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. They stayed in the canyon for a full day, resting the horses and themselves. Wade set snares and caught 2 rabbits that he roasted over the fire. They talked for hours, sharing stories from their lives, learning the small details that made each other who they were. Zara told him about her mother's singing, how it had filled their small apartment in Philadelphia with joy even when times were hard. Wade told her about the first time he saw the ocean in California, how the vastness of it had made him feel insignificant and comforted all at once. As evening fell on their second day in the canyon, Wade climbed to a high point and glassed the terrain behind them with the spyglass he carried. Far to the south, perhaps 10 miles distant, he saw riders, 4 of them moving in a line like hunters on a trail, Crane's men. He returned to camp to find Zara packing their supplies. She had seen the look on his face. "How far?" she asked. "Far enough. We have time." Wade helped her saddle the horses. "We will head east tonight, cross into Colorado at the Treacherous Pass. It is rough going, but they will not expect it, especially this time of year. And then we find your brother." They rode through the night again, climbing higher into the mountains. The pass was everything Wade had warned it would be. Steep, treacherous, covered in ice and snow that made every step dangerous. But the horses were sure-footed and Wade knew the way, having crossed it once before years ago. They emerged on the Colorado side just as dawn was breaking, looking down into a valley that stretched out green and endless before them. In the distance, Wade could see smoke from chimneys, the signs of civilization. "Where are we?" Zara asked. "San Luis Valley." Town called Alamosa is about 20 miles north. From there we can catch a stage to Leadville if we want, or ride it ourselves. "How long?" 4 days, maybe 5. Rough country between here and there. Zara nodded, her jaw set with determination. "Then let us get started." They reached Alamosa 2 days later, both of them saddle-sore and exhausted. The town was bustling despite the season, full of miners and ranchers and merchants. Wade found them rooms at a decent hotel and paid for baths to be drawn in both. The luxury of hot water and soap after days on the trail was almost overwhelming. That evening, as they ate dinner in the hotel restaurant, Wade spotted a familiar face across the room. Marshal Henry Dawson, an old friend from his deputy days, was drinking coffee and reading a newspaper. Wade excused himself and crossed to the marshal's table. "Henry, that you?" Dawson looked up, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "Wade Oakes. I heard you had retired to New Mexico. I did, but I am working a case unofficially, looking for someone. Can I buy you a drink? Over whiskey, Wade explained about Zachary Bennett. Dawson listened carefully, his expression growing troubled. I might have information for you, the marshal said. About a month ago, a young man matching that description was arrested in Leadville for getting into a fight with some minors. He gave the name John Brown, obvious fake, but he had a Pennsylvania accent and seemed educated. Judge let him go with a warning since the other fellow started it. Is he still in Leadville, as far as I know? He was working at a sawmill on the edge of town last I heard. Dawson studied Wade. This girl you are helping, she is more than just a case to you, is not she? Wade smiled slightly. That obvious? Only to someone who knows you. Be careful, Wade. This country has a way of taking what you love. I know, but I think she is worth the risk. Wade returned to their table and told Zara what he had learned. Relief and hope warred on her face. Leadville, she breathed. He is in Leadville. Maybe. We will not know for sure until we get there. They left a limosa the next morning on the northbound stage, joining 3 other passengers making the journey to the mining towns. The road climbed through the mountains, following the Arkansas River through some of the most spectacular scenery Wade had ever seen. Zara pressed her face to the window, drinking in the views of snow-capped peaks and deep canyons. The stage stopped in Buena Vista overnight, then continued on to Leadville the following day. They arrived in late afternoon to find a town that seemed to be bursting at the seams. Leadville sat at 10,000 feet, perched in a mountain valley where some of the richest silver and lead deposits in the world had been discovered. The population had exploded to nearly 15,000 in just a few years, making it one of the largest cities in Colorado Territory. The noise and chaos were overwhelming after days in the wilderness. Saloons blared music onto the muddy streets, where wagons and horses competed for space with pedestrians. Men called out from storefronts, hawking everything from mining equipment to hot meals. And everywhere, the stamp mills pounded away, crushing ore day and night in a rhythm that seemed to shake the very ground. Wade led Zara to a quieter part of town and found them rooms at a boarding house run by a no-nonsense widow named Mrs. Patterson. Then, with Zara practically vibrating with anticipation, they set out to find the sawmill. It sat on the outskirts of town, a sprawling operation with huge stacks of lumber waiting to be shipped to the mines. The screech of saws filled the air, along with the smell of fresh cut pine. Wade asked for the foreman and was directed to a stocky man with a thick beard. "We are looking for someone who might work here," Wade said. "Young fellow, mid-20s, from Pennsylvania. Might have started a month or so ago." The foreman scratched his beard. "That would be Jack Brown. Good worker, keeps to himself mostly." "Why, he in trouble?" Zara stepped forward before Wade could answer. "I am his sister. I have been looking for him for months. Is he here?" The foreman's expression softened. "He is working the north stack today. Come on, I will take you." They followed him through the sawmill, weaving between stacks of lumber and busy workers. Then they rounded a corner and Zara stopped dead, her hand flying to her mouth. A young man was loading boards onto a wagon, his back to them. He was tall and lean with dark hair that curled over his collar. When he turned, Wade saw the family resemblance immediately. He had the same gray eyes as Zara, the same delicate bone structure in his face. "Zachary," Zara whispered. The young man's head snapped up. For a moment he just stared at his sister as if she were a ghost. Then recognition flooded his features. "Zara! Zara!" She ran to him and he caught her, lifting her off her feet as they both began to cry. Wade felt his throat tighten watching them, the pure joy and relief of their reunion. The foreman cleared his throat awkwardly and backed away, leaving the siblings to their moment. Eventually, Zachary set Zara down and held her at arm's length, studying her face. "How did you find me? I have been writing letters, but I had no idea if you were getting them." "I never received any letters. Crane's men told me they would tell me where you were if I—" She trailed off, her face flushing. Zachary's expression darkened. "Those bastards! I am so sorry, Zara. I should never have left you there. I should have made you come with me even if it was dangerous. I am here now. That is all that matters." Zara turned to Wade, her face glowing. "Zachary, this is Wade Oakes. He saved my life and helped me find you." Zachary extended his hand to Wade, his grip firm. "I do not know how to thank you. No thanks needed. Your sister did most of the work herself. I just pointed her in the right direction." But Zachary was studying Wade with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. "There is more to it than that, I think. I can see it in the way you look at her." Wade met the younger man's eyes steadily. "Your sister is an extraordinary woman. I will not apologize for caring about her." For a moment the two men measured each other. Then Zachary smiled slightly. "Good. She deserves someone who cares. As long as you understand that if you hurt her, I will hunt you down." "Zachary," Zara protested, but she was smiling. "Fair enough," Wade said. "Though I should probably tell you that she is more than capable of hunting me down herself if I deserve it." Zachary laughed, the sound full of genuine warmth. "I do not doubt it." They left the sawmill together, Zachary promising his foreman he would be back in the morning. As they walked through Leadville's busy streets, the siblings catching each other up on everything that had happened, Wade felt a contentment settle over him. The quest that had brought him and Zara together was complete. Zachary was safe, the family reunited, but that contentment was tempered with uncertainty. What happened now? Zara had found what she was looking for. There was no reason for her to return to New Mexico with Wade. She could stay here with her brother, start a new life in Colorado. It was what made sense. The thought of losing her hollowed him out inside. That evening, over dinner at a restaurant, Zachary insisted on paying for with his sawmill wages. Wade learned more about what had happened after the young man fled Silver Springs. Zachary had indeed been heading for California when he stopped in Taos and talked with Thomas Reed. The conversation had convinced him to try his luck in Colorado instead, where the distance from New Mexico might offer more safety. "I have been saving every penny," Zachary said. "Living in a boarding house with 5 other fellows, eating 1 meal a day, putting the rest aside. I was hoping to earn enough to send for you within another month or 2. I had no idea Crane's men were bothering you, or that they had told you I was missing." "They were trying to use me to find you," Zara said. "When I ran, they must have realized I actually did not know where you were." "They are still looking for you both," Wade said. "We gave them the slip in New Mexico, but men like that do not give up easy." Zachary's jaw tightened. "Then we need to be smart about this. Maybe it is time to think about moving on, going somewhere they cannot find us." "Or," Wade said slowly, "you could come back to New Mexico with me. My ranch is remote enough that you could disappear there while we figure out what to do about Crane's men permanently." "We could not impose like that," Zara protested, but Wade could hear the hope in her voice. "It is not an imposition. I have the space and I could use help with the spring roundup anyway." Wade looked at Zachary. "You ever worked cattle, some, back in Pennsylvania, enough to know which end bites?" Wade smiled. "Then you are qualified. And your sister has already proven she can handle ranch work." Zachary looked between Wade and Zara, clearly reading the undercurrents flowing between them. "You want us to come back to your ranch because you need help with cattle. That is the only reason." Wade held his gaze. "No. It is not the only reason." "Wade," Zara said softly, but he pressed on. I will not lie to either of you. I have feelings for your sister, deep feelings. But I also genuinely believe that my ranch is the safest place for both of you right now, at least until we can settle things with Crane's men." "How would we settle things?" Zachary asked. "They killed Victor Crane. That makes them murderers in the eyes of the law. You killed Victor Crane in self-defense. Any honest judge would see that. What we need is for you to testify, get your side of the story on record. I have friends who are still in law enforcement who could help with that." Zara reached across the table and took her brother's hand. "What do you think?" Zachary was quiet for a long moment, turning over options in his mind. Finally, he nodded. "All right, we will go to New Mexico, at least for now." "But Mr. Oakes, Wade, I need you to understand that Zara is all the family I have. I made promises to our parents about taking care of her. I take those promises seriously." "I respect that," Wade said, "and I would never ask you to break them." They left Leadville 3 days later, once Zachary had collected his wages and said his goodbyes to the few friends he had made. The journey south was easier than the trip north had been, with better weather and no one pursuing them. They traveled by stage to Alamosa, then hired horses for the ride back into New Mexico. Crossing back through Treacherous Pass, Wade showed them the canyon where he and Zara had hidden from Crane's men. Zachary listened grimly to the story of the burned homestead and the injured settler. "I brought this on all of you," he said. "You brought nothing," Wade corrected. "Victor Crane brought this when he decided to run a crooked operation. You were a victim, same as everyone else he swindled." "Wade is right," Zara added. "You have to stop blaming yourself for things that were not your fault." The siblings had clearly had this argument before. Zachary shook his head but let it drop. They reached Wade's ranch on a warm afternoon in early March. The snow had melted from the valley floor, leaving behind grass that was just beginning to green up. Wildflowers dotted the hillsides, and the cottonwoods along the creek were starting to bud. Wade felt something in his chest loosen as his land came into view. Home. He showed Zachary to the small bunkhouse he had built when he first bought the ranch, thinking he might need hired hands someday. It was dusty from disuse but structurally sound, with a stove and a bunk and a table. "It is not much," Wade said. "It is perfect," Zachary assured him. "Better than sharing a room with 5 snoring mill workers." That night, Wade made dinner for the 3 of them. A simple meal of beef stew and fresh bread from the supplies they had bought in Abiquiu on the way through. They ate at his kitchen table, talking and laughing, and Wade marveled at how natural it felt to have people in his house again. How right it felt to have Zara across from him, smiling at something her brother said. After Zachary had retired to the bunkhouse, Zara helped Wade clean up the dishes. They worked in companionable silence for a while before she spoke. "Thank you for inviting Zachary to stay. I know it complicates things." "It does not complicate anything. He is your family. I would not have it any other way." Zara dried a plate slowly, not meeting his eyes. "What happens now, Wade? With us?" It was the question he had been turning over in his mind for days. Wade set down the pot he had been scrubbing and turned to face her. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it is fast and probably crazy, but it is the truth. I love you and I want you to stay here, not just until things are settled with Crane's men, but permanently. As my wife, if you will have me." Zara's eyes went wide. "Wade, I am not asking for an answer right now. I know you need time, need to figure out what you want. But I needed you to know how I feel, what I am hoping for." Zara set down the plate and came to him, taking his hands in hers. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you when I woke up in your house and saw how hard you were trying to save a stranger's life. Everything since then has just made me more certain." Wade's heart soared. Then why do you sound so sad? Because I am scared. Scared that Crane's men will find us. Scared that something will happen to you or Zachary because of me. Scared that this happiness is too fragile to last. Wade pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. I am scared too, but I think anything worth having is scary, and you are definitely worth having, Zara Bennett. She tipped her face up to his and they kissed, slow and sweet and full of promise. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Wade and Zachary worked the ranch together, repairing fences and preparing for the spring cattle drive to market. Zara took over the garden, coaxing vegetables from the rich soil, and helped with the endless chores that came with ranch life. In the evenings, they ate together and talked, the three of them gradually becoming a family. Wade sent a letter to Sheriff Martinez in Abiquiu, asking him to put out discreet inquiries about Crane's men. The reply came 2 weeks later. The 4 men had been spotted in Espanola, asking questions about Zara. Martinez had told them she had gone to Santa Fe, sending them on a false trail. But the sheriff warned that it was only a matter of time before they widened their search. We need to end this, Wade said, showing the letter to Zachary and Zara. As long as those men are out there, none of us are safe. What do you propose? Zachary asked. Wade had been thinking about this since the letter arrived. We contact the territorial marshal in Santa Fe, get him involved officially. You testify about what happened with Victor Crane, and we make it clear that his men are wanted for arson and assault at minimum, murder if that homesteader died from his burns. What if the marshal does not believe me? What if he decides I am the one who should be arrested? He will believe you because I will vouch for you. I still have pull from my deputy marshal days, and we have witnesses, people who can testify to Crane's character and his illegal operations. Zara bit her lip. It is risky. Everything is risky, but at least this way we are taking action instead of just waiting for them to find us. In the end, they agreed. Wade composed a careful letter to Marshal Theodore Kane in Santa Fe, laying out the facts of the case and requesting a meeting. The reply came within a week. Kane remembered Wade from the old days and was willing to hear them out. He set a meeting for April 15th in Santa Fe. The night before they were set to leave for Santa Fe, Wade found Zara sitting on the porch of the ranch house, staring out at the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Beautiful, is not it? He said, settling onto the step beside her. I never get tired of it. The way the light changes every evening, always different. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I could be happy here, Wade, really happy, if we can just get through this. We will get through it, I promise you that. She turned to look at him, her gray eyes serious. You cannot promise that. You do not know what will happen. Then I promise I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. Is that better? A smile tugged at her lips. A little. Wade reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I have something for you. Zara took the box with trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring set with a small turquoise stone. It was my mother's, Wade said. The only thing I have of hers. I know we have not exactly done this in the traditional order, but Zara Bennett, will you marry me? Will you build a life here with me on this ranch, and let me love you for as long as I am breathing? Tears spilled down Zara's cheeks. Yes. Yes, Wade, I will marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger and she held up her hand, watching the stone catch the fading light. Then she kissed him, deep and passionate, and Wade felt the last piece of his heart that he had been holding back click into place. They were married the next morning in Abiquiu, with Sheriff Martinez and his wife serving as witnesses and Zachary giving his sister away. The ceremony was brief and simple, conducted by a circuit judge who happened to be passing through. But when Wade placed a second ring on Zara's finger, a new one he had commissioned from the local silversmith, and said his vows. He meant every word with his whole being. "I promise to love you, protect you, and honor you for all my days," he said, holding both her hands. "I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your safe harbor in every storm. You showed up in my life when I needed you most, even if I did not know it, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that frozen morning in my barn." Zara's vows were equally heartfelt. "I promise to love you with everything I have. You saved me, Wade, not just from the cold but from loneliness and fear. You showed me what it means to be truly cared for, and I will spend my life showing you the same. Whatever comes, we face it together." They left Abiquiu as husband and wife, with Zachary riding alongside them toward Santa Fe. The meeting with Marshal Kane was set for the following afternoon, giving them time to find lodging and prepare their testimony. Santa Fe was larger than any town Wade had visited in years, full of adobe buildings that glowed golden in the afternoon sun. They found rooms at a hotel near the plaza and spent the evening going over what Zachary would say to the marshal. The meeting took place in Kane's office in the territorial courthouse. The marshal was a gruff man in his 60s with a reputation for fairness and a low tolerance for crime. He listened carefully as Zachary recounted the story of Victor Crane's swindle, the confrontation that led to the shooting, and the threats from Crane's men. "You should have reported this to the law immediately," Kane said when Zachary finished. "I know that now, sir, but I was scared. Crane had a lot of men working for him, and I had just killed someone even if it was self-defense. I panicked." Kane turned to Wade. "You vouch for this young man." "I do. He is telling the truth. And Crane's men are dangerous, Marshal. They burned a homestead looking for Miss Bennett, nearly killed the man who lived there. Someone needs to stop them before they hurt anyone else." The marshal drummed his fingers on his desk, thinking. Finally, he nodded. "All right. I will issue warrants for the 4 men. You can give me descriptions." Zachary provided what details he remembered, and Kane wrote them down. "As for you, Mr. Bennett, I am inclined to accept your story about the shooting being self-defense, but I want you to stay available in case I need additional testimony. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. I am living on Wade's ranch outside Abiquiu." "Good. I will be in touch." Kane stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Mr. Oakes, a word in private." Wade nodded to Zara and Zachary, who left the office. When they were alone, Kane fixed Wade with a penetrating stare. "You are taking a big risk getting involved in this. Those men will not appreciate having warrants out on them." "I know, but it is the right thing to do." "Is it? Or is it because you have feelings for the girl?" When Wade did not answer, Kane smiled slightly. "I heard you got married this morning. Congratulations." "Thank you. Just be careful. Love makes us do foolish things sometimes." "This is not foolish. This is protecting my family." Kane's expression softened. "Then I wish you luck. You are a good man, Wade, always were. If you need help, you know where to find me." They left Santa Fe that afternoon, relieved to have the law officially on their side. The ride back to the ranch took 2 days, and they arrived to find everything as they had left it. The horses were fine in the pasture. The garden had been watered by spring rains, and the house stood solid and welcoming. That night, with Zachary settled in the bunkhouse, Wade and Zara finally had their wedding night in the privacy of the ranch house. They made love slowly, tenderly, exploring each other with reverence and joy. Afterward, lying in Wade's bed with Zara curled against his side, Wade felt a peace so profound it almost hurt. "I never thought I could be this happy," he murmured, running his fingers through her dark hair. "Neither did I," Zara whispered. "It feels like a dream. If it is, I do not want to wake up." They drifted off to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, and Wade's last thought before darkness took him was that he would do anything to protect this happiness, this life they were building together. Spring turned to summer, and life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Zachary proved to be a quick learner and a hard worker, taking on more responsibility as he gained confidence. Wade taught him about managing cattle, reading the weather, and all the small skills that made the difference between a good ranch hand and a great one. Zara thrived in her new life. Her garden flourished, providing fresh vegetables that transformed their meals. She learned to ride better, to help with the cattle work, to handle a rifle with confidence. Wade watched her bloom like the wildflowers on the hillsides, shedding the fear and uncertainty that had marked her when he first found her. They received word in June that Marshal Kane had arrested 2 of Crane's men in Albuquerque. The other 2 were still at large, but the marshal was confident they would be found. In the meantime, Zachary's testimony had been formally recorded, and the shooting of Victor Crane ruled as justified self-defense. The weight that had been hanging over the young man's head lifted, and Wade saw him smile more, relax into his new life. Late one evening in July, as Wade and Zara sat on the porch watching fireflies dance over the meadow, she took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I am with child," she said softly. "I am almost certain." Wade's hand spread across her belly, feeling the slight curve that was just beginning to show. Joy flooded through him, so intense it brought tears to his eyes. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without a doctor, but all the signs are there." Wade pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "We are going to have a baby." "We are," Zara laughed, the sound full of wonder. "We are going to be parents, Wade. Can you believe it?" "No, yes, I do not know." Wade laughed too, giddy with happiness. "When?" "January, I think. Maybe early February. A winter baby. They will be tough." "Like their father." They told Zachary the next morning, and he whooped with joy, picking up his sister and spinning her around until she protested that he was making her dizzy. He shook Wade's hand with such enthusiasm it hurt. "I am going to be an uncle. This is the best news. The very best." As summer faded into fall, Zara's pregnancy became more pronounced. Wade found himself constantly worrying about her, making sure she did not lift anything too heavy or work too hard in the garden. Zara tolerated his hovering with good humor, though she occasionally had to remind him that she was pregnant, not fragile. Word came in September that the last 2 of Crane's men had been arrested in El Paso, trying to cross into Mexico. They were being transported back to New Mexico to stand trial for arson and assault. Marshal Kane wrote that the case was solid and he expected convictions. The threat that had hung over them for months was finally, truly ended. They celebrated that night with a special dinner, and Wade raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said. "To family, to justice, and to the future we are building together." "To new beginnings," Zara and Zachary echoed. Winter came early that year, with the first snow falling in November. Wade prepared the ranch carefully, making sure they had enough supplies to last if they got snowed in. He set up a room next to the bedroom as a nursery, building a cradle from pine he had cut himself. Zara sewed blankets and tiny clothes, her face glowing with anticipation. On a frigid night in late January, exactly 1 year after Wade had found Zara frozen in his barn, she went into labor. Wade sent Zachary racing to Abiquiu for the midwife, while he stayed with Zara, holding her hand and trying not to panic as the contractions grew stronger. The midwife arrived 2 hours later, a capable woman named Rosa who had delivered half the babies in the valley. She took charge immediately, shooing Wade out of the room despite his protests. "Your job is done, Mr. Oakes," Rosa said firmly. "Now it is women's work. Go wait with your brother-in-law and try not to wear a hole in the floor with your pacing. The next 6 hours were the longest of Wade's life. He sat in the kitchen with Zachary, drinking coffee and jumping at every sound from the bedroom. Zachary tried to distract him with stories from Pennsylvania, but Wade could barely focus on the words. Finally, just as the sun was rising, a baby's cry split the air. Wade was on his feet instantly, but Rosa appeared in the doorway before he could rush past her. "You have a son, Mr. Oakes, a healthy, strong boy, and your wife is doing fine, though she is exhausted." Wade pushed past her into the bedroom, his eyes going immediately to Zara. She was propped up against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale with exhaustion. And in her arms, wrapped in one of the blankets she had sewn, was the tiniest human Wade had ever seen. "Come meet your son," Zara said softly. Wade crossed to the bed on shaking legs and looked down at the baby. He had a shock of dark hair and a scrunched-up red face, and he was the most beautiful thing Wade had ever seen. "Can I hold him?" Zara carefully transferred the bundle to Wade's arms. The baby was so light, so fragile, and Wade felt a surge of protective love so fierce it nearly brought him to his knees. This was his son, his child, the product of his love for Zara and her love for him. "Hello, little one," Wade whispered. "Welcome to the world." The baby opened his eyes, revealing a shade of gray that matched his mother's perfectly. "What should we name him?" Zara asked. Wade had been thinking about this for months. "I was hoping we could name him after your father. What was his name?" "Daniel Bennett." "Daniel Oakes," Wade said, testing it out. "Danny, I like it." "Daniel Wade Oakes," Zara said, "after both his grandfathers." Wade felt his throat tighten. "Your father would be proud of you, Zara, so proud." They spent the rest of the day in a haze of happiness, taking turns holding the baby and marveling at his tiny fingers and toes. Zachary was a doting uncle from the first moment, promising Danny that he would teach him to fish and ride and all the important things in life. Rosa stayed for 3 days, making sure both mother and baby were healthy before she returned to Abiquiu. Wade paid her generously and made her promise to come back if they needed anything. The winter passed in a blur of sleepless nights and countless diaper changes. Wade had never been so exhausted or so happy. Watching Zara with their son, seeing the love in her eyes as she nursed him or sang him to sleep, made Wade fall in love with her all over again. Every single day spring came again, bringing green grass and wildflowers and the promise of new life. Danny was thriving, growing bigger and stronger. He had Wade's stubborn chin and Zara's smile, and he was already showing signs of being determined and curious about everything. One afternoon in April, as Wade was working on repairing the barn roof, a rider approached the ranch. Wade climbed down, his hand going instinctively to the gun at his hip, but he relaxed when he recognized Marshal Kane. "Marshal, this is a surprise." Kane dismounted, looking tired and dusty from the road. "Wanted to deliver the news in person. The trial is over." All 4 of Crane's men were convicted. 2 got 10 years for arson and assault. The other 2 got 15 for attempted murder. They will be in the territorial prison for a long time. Relief washed over Wade. "Thank you for seeing it through. Just doing my job. But I figured you and your family would want to know you can stop looking over your shoulders now." Zara came out of the house with Danny in her arms, and Kane's weathered face broke into a smile. "Well now, who is this handsome fellow?" "Our son, Daniel," Zara said proudly. "Born in January." "Congratulations to you both. He is a fine-looking boy." Kane tipped his hat. "I will not keep you. Just wanted to deliver the news and make sure you were all doing well." After the marshal left, Wade held Zara and Danny close, breathing in the scent of his wife's hair and his son's baby smell. "It is really over," Zara murmured. "It is. We can move forward now, build the life we want without any shadows hanging over us." That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, the four of them, Wade looked at the faces of his family and felt a contentment so deep it seemed to fill every corner of his being. Zachary was laughing at something Danny had done, making faces at his nephew. Zara was smiling, her hand resting over Wade's under the table. And Danny was gurgling happily in his mother's lap, completely oblivious to the love surrounding him. This was what Wade had been searching for during all those lonely years, even if he had not known it. Not just peace or solitude, but connection, family, love that filled the empty spaces and made every hardship worthwhile. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under Wade and Zachary's management. They built a second barn and expanded the cattle herd, selling beef to the growing settlements in the valley. Zara's garden became famous in Abiquiu, and she made extra money selling vegetables and preserves in town. Danny grew into a bright, active child who loved the ranch and followed his father and uncle everywhere. When he was 3, Zara gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, who had Wade's dark hair and a fiery personality that kept them all on their toes. 2 years after that came another son, Michael, who was quiet and thoughtful like his uncle Zachary. Zachary himself eventually married a kind schoolteacher named Emma who came to Abiquiu to establish a small school in the valley. They built a house on the far corner of Wade's land and had 3 children of their own, filling the valley with laughter and the sounds of childhood. Wade and Zara grew old together, their love deepening with every passing year. They faced hardships, droughts that tested their resilience and winters that seemed endless. But they faced them together, their partnership unshakable. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Wade took Zara back to the barn where he had found her all those years ago. It had been rebuilt twice since then, larger and sturdier, but the spot where she had lain in the hay was still there. "I think about that morning sometimes," Wade said, holding his wife's hand. "How close I came to never knowing you. If the storm had been worse, if you had sheltered somewhere else, if I had gone to the barn an hour later." "But you did not," Zara said, squeezing his fingers. "You found me, you saved me, and you loved me. Everything else is just details. You saved me too, you know. I was half alive when you came into my life. You woke me up, made me feel again." Zara smiled, the same smile that had captured his heart 25 years ago. "Then I guess we saved each other." They walked back to the house hand in hand, the New Mexico sun warm on their faces. In the distance, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their voices carrying on the wind. Danny was teaching his own son to ride, just as Wade had taught him. Sarah was in the garden with her mother, and Michael was helping Zachary repair a fence. It was a good life, a full life. And it all started with a woman frozen in a barn and a whispered name that changed everything. The end of their story came peacefully, many years later. Wade was 73 and Zara 71 when he passed away in his sleep, her hand in his, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Zara followed him 6 months later, and they were buried side by side on the hill overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land and the family they had built together. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations. And sometimes, on cold winter mornings when the snow fell thick and white, the grandchildren would ask about the story of how it all began. How a cowboy found a woman frozen in his barn, how she whispered a name that changed his life forever, and how that moment of desperate chance became the foundation of a love that lasted a lifetime. It was a story worth telling, a legacy worth preserving. Because in a land as hard and unforgiving as the Wild West, Love like that was rarer than gold and more precious than anything money could buy. And Wade and Zara had found it, nurtured it, and left it behind as a gift to all who came after them. Their love story became legend in the valley, told and retold until the details blurred into myth. But the core truth remained unchanged, that sometimes salvation comes when you least expect it, that love can bloom in the harshest conditions, and that the smallest act of kindness can change not just one life but generations to come. The ranch house still stands today, weathered but sturdy, a testament to the life Wade and Zara built together. And if you listen carefully on a quiet evening, some say you can still hear the sound of laughter, the murmur of voices sharing stories around the dinner table, and the echo of a love that refused to be forgotten. That is how it ended, and how it began, and how it lived on in the hearts of everyone who knew them or heard their story. A cowboy and the woman he found frozen in his barn, brought together by chance and fate, and a single whispered name that truly did change his life forever.